John Marshall and How Justice Shaped America. This is a quiet night, my dear. The moon hangs low in the sky, like a soft lantern shining through the window, and the world outside has sunk into a gentle silence. No loud noises, no hurried footsteps, only the soft rustle of leaves and the steady rhythm of your own breath. The moonlight spills over your bed, like a pool of silver, wrapping around you like a hug from the night itself. I can smell the faint scent of lavender from your pillow, a sweet, calming aroma that will carry you to dreamland soon. Tonight, we will tell a story of courage, wisdom, and a gift called justice, a story that began long ago, when America was still a young nation finding its way. Close your eyes, my love, let your body grow heavy with rest, let your shoulders relax, let your hands fall softly by your sides, and let your mind drift back in time, to a year called 1801, when the air smelled of wood smoke and ink, and the sound of horse hooves and carriage wheels filled the streets of the new capital, Washington. I love you, my dear, and this story is for you, a gift of warmth and knowledge, to wrap around you as you sleep. Remember, you are safe here, surrounded by love, and nothing can hurt you on this quiet night that I love you, my dear. You are safe here, wrapped in warmth, and this story will wrap around you too, like a soft blanket woven with care. Remember, every story has a beginning, and this one begins with a young nation, still learning how to stand on its own 2 feet, still learning how to keep its promise to the people who built it. It was a time when the United States was just 12 years old, younger than some of the children you know, younger than the dog that chases butterflies in the park, younger than the old oak tree in the backyard. Its leaders were still figuring out how to make the Constitution, that great document of hope, work for every person, for the farmer in Virginia, the merchant in Boston, the blacksmith in Pennsylvania, and the child sitting by the fire, listening to stories of freedom. Back then, America was not the big, strong nation we know today. It was a small, fragile thing, like a seed just beginning to grow, needing care and wisdom to bloom. The roads were not paved with asphalt, but with dirt and stones. The houses were not tall and bright, but small and warm, with fireplaces that crackled through the night, keeping families safe from the cold. Remember, my dear, this was a time of hope and uncertainty, a time when every decision mattered, a time when one man's wisdom would change the course of history forever. Close your eyes, my dear, and let us go back. Imagine the air on your skin. It is crisp, like autumn, with a hint of wood smoke from the fireplaces of the small, brick houses that line the streets. The smoke curls up into the sky, thin and gray, mixing with the soft clouds that float beside the moon. The roads are dirt, dust swirling gently when a horse passes by, tickling your nose. If you stand too close, men wear long coats made of wool, heavy and warm, and tall hats made of felt, their boots clicking on the stones as they walk, a steady, rhythmic sound that echoes through the quiet streets. Women wear long dresses with aprons, the fabric soft and plain, carrying baskets of bread still warm from the oven, or cloth woven by hand, colorful and bright. The buildings are simple, no tall skyscrapers, no electric lights, no cars honking in the distance, just small homes with sloped roofs, a few government buildings made of brick, and the sound of a blacksmith's hammer ringing in the distance, a loud, steady clink-clink-clink that mixes with the chirp of crickets and the hoot of an owl. In the market square, you can smell fresh apples and cinnamon, bread baking in the nearby bakery, and the earthy scent of vegetables brought in from the farms outside the city. Children run through the streets, laughing, chasing each other, their voices light and happy, before their mothers call them home for bedtime. This was the world of 1801, my dear, a world slower and quieter, a world where people relied on each other, a world where every day was a gift. This was a time of change, my dear. A time when two groups of people disagreed about how the country should be run. A disagreement that was not angry or mean, but full of passion and hope for the future. One group, called the Federalists, believed in a strong federal government, one that could unite all the states as one nation, one that could make laws that applied to everyone, one that could protect the country from danger. They believed that the states needed to work together, not apart, to build a strong America. The Federalists loved the Constitution, and they wanted to make sure it was respected, that it was the foundation of everything the country stood for. They were led by men like John Adams, the second president, and John Marshall, a wise man who had fought for America's freedom. The other group, called the Democratic Republicans, believed that the states should have more power, that the people closest to their homes should make the most important decisions. They were afraid that a strong federal government would become too powerful, that it would take away the rights of the people, that it would be like the King of Britain, who had ruled America before the Revolution. They were led by Thomas Jefferson, a man who loved freedom and equality, a man who believed in the power of the people. These two groups disagreed, my dear, but they both loved America, both wanted what was best for the country. It was a time of debate, a time of discussion, a time when ideas clashed, but always with respect. Remember, my dear, disagreement is not a bad thing. It is how we learn, how we grow, how we find the best path forward. It was a time of uncertainty, too, my dear. The second President of the United States, John Adams, a Federalist, was leaving office. He had served his country well, but his time as president was coming to an end. The new president, Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican, was about to take his place, and the whole country was watching, wondering what would happen next. Would the two parties work together? Would the country stay united? Would the Constitution be protected? These were the questions on everyone's minds, as they gathered in taverns and homes, talking in soft voices, hoping for the best. And in the days before President Adams left, he tried to fill as many government jobs as possible with Federalists, so that his party would still have a voice in the government, even after he was gone. He wanted to make sure that the Federalist ideas, of a strong federal government, of respect for the Constitution, would not be forgotten. He knew that Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans had different ideas, and he wanted to make sure that the balance of power was fair, that no one group had too much control. So he stayed up late, night after night, signing papers, appointing men he trusted to be judges, to be clerks, to be officials in the government. These were important jobs, jobs that would shape the country's future, jobs that would make sure the laws were followed, that justice was done. These jobs were for judges, men who would decide what was right and fair, who would make sure the laws were followed, who would protect the rights of the people. Judges were important in 1801, my dear, because there were no computers, no phones, no way to spread news quickly. People relied on judges to settle disputes, to make sure that no one was treated unfairly, to make sure that the law was the same for everyone, rich or poor, strong or weak. President Adams stayed up late on his last night in office, signing papers to appoint these judges, the fire in his office burning low, the candlelight flickering on his face as he wrote his name again and again. The clock struck midnight, and still he signed, determined to make sure that the Federalists had a voice in the government. People called them midnight judges because they were appointed so late, in the middle of the night, when most of the country was asleep. Some people thought this was a good thing, a way to keep the government balanced. Others thought it was unfair, a way for Adams to hold on to power even after he left office. But Adams did not care what others thought, my dear. He cared about his country, about protecting the Constitution, about making sure that justice would always prevail. He knew that these judges would be the guardians of the law, and he wanted to make sure they were men of honor and wisdom. One of these judges was a man named William Marbury. He was a kind, hard-working man who lived in Georgetown, a small town near the capital, a town with tree-lined streets and small homes, where everyone knew everyone else. Marbury was not a rich man, not a famous man, but he was a good man, a man who loved his family, a man who believed in justice. He had a wife named Elizabeth and 2 children, a boy named William Jr., who was 7 years old, and a girl named Sarah, who was 5. His home was a small, cozy house with a fireplace in the living room, a garden in the backyard where Elizabeth grew vegetables and flowers, and a porch where the family would sit in the evenings, watching the sunset. Marbury worked as a lawyer, helping people who had been wronged, helping people who could not afford to fight for themselves. He had waited a long time for a job as a judge, a job that would let him help even more people, a job that would give his family security, a job that would let him serve his country with pride. He had worked hard for years, studying the law, helping others, proving that he was a man of honor and integrity. He was so excited when he heard he had been appointed. He ran home to tell his wife, his children, his friends. His face lit up with joy. He picked up Sarah and spun her around, laughing, telling her that soon, their family would be safe, that he would be able to give them everything they needed. He waited eagerly for his official papers, the ones that would make his appointment real, the ones that would let him take his place as a judge. Every day, he would walk to the post office, asking if the papers had arrived, his heart racing with hope. Every night, he would talk to Elizabeth about his dreams, about how he would help people, about how he would make sure that justice was done for everyone. But those days turned into weeks, and still, the papers did not come. Marbury tried to stay hopeful, but his heart grew heavy, his smile faded, and he began to worry that something had gone wrong. But those papers never came, my dear. You see, the man who was in charge of sending out the papers was John Marshall. He was both the Secretary of State, the man who handles the government's papers and messages, who talks to other countries, who makes sure that the government runs smoothly, and, soon, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the highest judge in the entire country, the man who leads the court that decides the most important cases, the man who is the guardian of the Constitution. Marshall was busy, so busy, with the change of presidents, with handing over his job as Secretary of State to the new Secretary, James Madison, with making sure that all the government's business was in order before he left his old job and started his new one. He had papers stacked high on his desk, letters to read, meetings to attend, people to talk to. He worked from dawn until dusk, and sometimes even longer, his eyes growing tired, his hands aching from writing. In all that business, in all that chaos of changing power, He forgot to send out 17 of the judge's papers, including William Marbury's. It was not a mistake made on purpose, my dear. It was a mistake made out of tiredness, out of business, out of the pressure of trying to do too many things at once. Marshall was a good man, a wise man, but he was human, and humans make mistakes. He did not know that this small mistake, forgetting to send a few papers, would lead to a case that would change America forever, a case that would give birth to a gift called judicial review. He did not know that this mistake would test his wisdom, his courage, his commitment to justice. When President Jefferson took office, he heard about these midnight judges, and he was not happy. He thought President Adams had cheated, trying to fill the government with his own friends, trying to hold on to power even after he was gone. Jefferson believed that the midnight judges were unfair, that they were appointed in haste, in anger, not because they were the best men for the job, but because they were Federalists. He thought that Adams had tried to stack the deck, to make sure that the Democratic Republicans could not make the changes they wanted to make sure that the federal government stayed strong, even if the people wanted more power for the states. So he called a meeting with James Madison, his new Secretary of State, a man who was loyal to Jefferson, a man who believed in the same ideas. These appointments were made in anger, in haste, Jefferson said, his voice firm but calm. They do not deserve to be honored. They are not fair to the people, to the states, to the country we are trying to build. Do not send out the remaining papers. Do not let these men take their jobs. We will start fresh, with men who believe in our vision. Men who will work for the people. Madison nodded, agreeing with the president. He knew that Jefferson was right, that the midnight judges were a way for Adams to hold on to power. So he did as the president told him, putting the remaining papers in a drawer, forgetting about them, refusing to send them out. He did not think about the men who were waiting for those papers, the men who had dreamed of serving their country, the men who had hoped for a better future for their families. He only thought about following the president's orders, about making sure that the Democratic Republicans had control. William Marbury was heartbroken, my dear. He had dreamed of this job, of serving his country, of providing for his family, of making sure that justice was done. He had told his children that soon he would be a judge, that he would help people, that he would make their family proud. He had watched his wife's face light up with hope, knowing that their future would be secure. But now, weeks had passed, and there was no sign of the papers. He went to James Madison, again and again, walking from Georgetown to the Capitol, his boots wearing thin, his heart heavy with disappointment. He would stand outside Madison's office, waiting for hours, hoping to talk to him, hoping to ask why the papers had not come. When he finally got to see Madison, he would beg him, his voice shaking, his eyes filled with tears. "Please, Mr. Secretary," he would say, "I was appointed by President Adams. I have worked hard for this job. My family is counting on me. Please send me my papers." But Madison would shake his head, his face cold, his voice firm. "The president says no," he would say, turning Marbury away. "There is nothing you can do. The appointments were unfair, and they will not be honored. Go home, Mr. Marbury. There is no hope for you." Marbury would walk home, his head down, his heart broken, the streets seeming longer and colder than before. He would go home to his family, to his wife who would hug him, to his children who would ask, "Daddy, when will you be a judge?" And he would have to tell them, gently, that he did not know, that he was trying, that he would not give up. But inside, he felt like giving up. He felt like his dreams had been crushed, like justice had failed him, but Marbury did not give up, my dear. He believed in justice. He believed that the law should protect him, that his appointment was fair and right, that no one, not even the president, could take that away from him. He thought about his children, about the example he wanted to set for them. He wanted them to know that when you believe in something, when you know it is right, you do not give up, even when things are hard. He thought about the Constitution, about the words that said all men are created equal, about the promise of justice for all. He knew that he had to fight, not just for himself, but for all the people who had ever been wronged, for all the people who believed in justice. So he decided to take his case to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court. He asked the court to order James Madison to send him his papers, to give him the job he had been promised. He hired a lawyer, a man named Charles Lee, who believed in his case, who believed that Marbury was right. Together, they prepared their case, gathering evidence, writing arguments, hoping that the Supreme Court would see the truth, would make things right. Marbury knew that this was a long shot, that the Supreme Court had never done anything like this before, that no one knew if the court had the power to make the president do anything. But he did not care. He had to try. He had to stand up for what was right. Remember, my dear, courage is not the absence of fear. It is being afraid, but still moving forward. That is what William Marbury did. He was afraid, but he moved forward, because he believed in justice. And who was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the man who would decide Marbury's case? It was John Marshall, the same man who had forgotten to send the papers in the first place. Can you imagine how he felt, my dear? He was the one who had made the mistake, the one who had forgotten to send Marbury's papers, and now he had to decide a case that would change the country forever. He felt guilty, of course, guilty that his mistake had caused Marbury so much pain, guilty that he had put himself in this position. But he also felt a great sense of responsibility. He knew that this case was not just about William Marbury, not just about a job. It was about the Constitution, about the power of the courts, about the future of America. He knew that his decision would shape the country for centuries to come, that it would decide who had the power to interpret the Constitution, who had the power to make sure that the law was followed. He knew that he had to put his guilt aside, put his personal feelings aside, and do what was right for his country. He knew that he had to be wise, to be fair, to be courage. This was his moment, his chance to show the country what it meant to be a guardian of the Constitution. And he was ready. Did I want you to meet John Marshall, my love? He was not a tall man, but he had kind eyes, warm and gentle, eyes that seemed to see into your soul, eyes that made you feel safe, eyes that made you believe that he would do what was right. He had a strong voice, a deep, steady voice that made people listen, a voice that was calm even in the most difficult times, a voice that spoke with wisdom and kindness. He had fought in the Revolutionary War, when America was fighting for its freedom from Britain, when the country was young and fragile, when every battle was a fight for survival. He had been a soldier, a young man full of courage, fighting alongside his friends, fighting for the freedom that we all enjoy today. He had seen what it was like to live without justice, without a strong government to protect the people. He had seen families torn apart, homes destroyed, people suffering because there was no one to stand up for them. He had seen the darkness of oppression, and he had vowed to never let that happen again. He had grown up in Virginia, on a small farm, a farm with rolling hills, green fields, and a small cabin where his family lived. He had worked hard from a young age, plowing the fields, feeding the animals, helping his parents with the chores. He knew what it was like to work hard, to struggle, to hope for a better future. He knew what it was like to be hungry, to be tired, to feel like giving up. But he also knew what it was like to have hope, to have faith, to believe that things could get better. He taught himself to read and write, using books that he borrowed from neighbors, because his family could not afford to send him to school. He loved to read, loved to learn, loved to think about the world, about justice, about freedom. And that love of learning, that love of justice, would carry him far, would make him one of the greatest leaders in American history. Marshall believed in the Constitution, that great document that had been written just 12 years before, in 1789, by men who had fought for freedom, by men who wanted to build a country where everyone was treated fairly, where everyone had rights, where no one was above the law. He believed that the Constitution was the highest law of the land, higher than any other law, higher than any president's order, higher than any decision made by Congress. He believed that the Constitution was a promise to every American that they would be free, that they would be treated fairly, that their rights would be protected. And he knew that if the Constitution was to mean anything, someone had to make sure that the laws and the actions of the government followed it. Someone had to be the guardian of the Constitution. Someone had to make sure that no one broke that promise. He knew that this was a great responsibility, a responsibility that no one had ever taken on before. But he was willing to take it, because he loved his country, because he believed in justice, because he wanted to make sure that the freedom that so many had fought for was not lost. But there was a problem, my dear. The Constitution did not say who that guardian should be. It did not say whether the President, the Congress, or the court should decide if a law was against the Constitution. It did not say who had the power to interpret the Constitution, to say what it meant, to make sure that everyone followed it. This was a big problem, a problem that had been there since the Constitution was written. The men who wrote the Constitution had disagreed about this, too. Some thought the President should be the guardian, some thought Congress should, some thought the court should. But they could not agree, so they left it out, hoping that future leaders would figure it out. And now, John Marshall had to figure it out. This was the question that John Marshall had to answer, the question that would shape America for centuries to come. Would the courts have the power to say that a law was against the Constitution? Would the courts be the guardians of the Constitution? Or would that power belong to the President, or to Congress? Marshall knew that his answer would change everything. He knew that it would decide the balance of power in America, that it would decide whether the Constitution was just a piece of paper, or a living, breathing promise. Let me tell you about a little girl named Eliza, my dear. She was 8 years old, with curly brown hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. She lived in Washington, near the Supreme Court, in a small house with a white picket fence, a garden full of daisies, and a porch where she loved to sit and read. Her father was a printer, a man named Thomas, who printed the laws and the news of the day, who worked long hours in his shop, surrounded by ink and paper. Eliza loved to watch her father work, to smell the sharp, rich scent of ink, to feel the smooth paper beneath her fingers, to watch the words appear on the page as her father pressed the printer's lever. She would sit by his side for hours, asking him questions, listening to him talk about the government, about the laws, about the people who made them. She was a curious little girl, always wanting to learn, always wanting to know why things were the way they were. She would ask her father, "Why do we have laws, Father? Why do we have a president? What is the Constitution?" And her father would answer her gently, in a soft voice, explaining things in a way that she could understand, making sure that she knew how lucky she was to live in a free country. Eliza loved her father, loved listening to his stories, loved learning about the world around her. She dreamed of one day being a printer, too, or a lawyer, or a judge, someone who could help people, someone who could make a difference. One day, Eliza heard her father talking to a friend, a man named James, who was a lawyer, who had worked with William Marbury. They were sitting in the shop, drinking tea, their voices soft, their faces serious. Eliza was sitting in the corner, pretending to read, but she was listening closely. "It's a terrible thing," her father said, shaking his head, his voice filled with sadness. Marbury was promised a job he worked hard for, a job that would give his family security. And now he's being denied, just because he's a Federalist, just because the new president doesn't like the midnight judges. But what can he do? The president won't listen, and the court, well, no one knows if the court has the power to make the president do anything. No one has ever asked the court to say that a president's order is against the Constitution. It's unheard of. James nodded, his face serious. "You're right, Thomas. Marbury has no other options. He's tried talking to Madison, he's tried everything. The only hope he has is the Supreme Court. But who knows what they'll decide? The Chief Justice is John Marshall, and is the one who forgot to send the papers in the first place. Will he be fair? Will he do what's right? Or will he let his mistake, his guilt, cloud his judgment?" Eliza's father sighed. "I don't know, James. I hope he's fair. I hope he remembers that justice is more important than party, more important than personal feelings. I hope he remembers that the Constitution is more important than any one man." Eliza looked up at her father, her blue eyes wide with curiosity and sadness. She put down her book and walked over to him, taking his hand in hers. "Why can't the court help him, Father?" she asked, her voice soft, her eyes filled with confusion. "Isn't the court supposed to make things fair? Isn't the court supposed to help people who have been wronged? Marbury Shansung is a good man, isn't he? Why won't they help him?" Her father smiled, brushing her curly brown hair back from her face, his hand warm and gentle. He knelt down so that he was eye level with her, his voice soft and loving. "That's what we hope, Eliza," he said. "That's what the court is supposed to do. Make things fair, help people who have been wronged. But the court has never had that power before. No one has ever asked the court to say that a law, or a president's order, is against the Constitution. It's uncharted territory, my dear. It's like sailing into the ocean without a map, without a compass. Not knowing where you're going, not knowing if you'll ever find your way back. The court has to decide something that no one has ever decided before. And that's scary, for everyone involved. Her father smiled, brushing her hair back from her face. That's what we hope, Eliza, he said. But the court has never had that power before. No one has ever asked the court to say that a law, or a president's order, is against the Constitution. It's uncharted territory, my dear. Like sailing into the ocean without a map. He picked her up, holding her in his arms, and kissed her forehead. But I have hope, Eliza. I have hope that John Marshall will do what's right. I have hope that the court will remember its duty to the Constitution, to the people. I have hope that justice will prevail. Eliza nodded, wrapping her arms around her father's neck. She did not fully understand what uncharted territory meant, but she understood that things were scary, that Marbury Shansung needed help, that the court had a big decision to make. And she decided that she would pray for Marbury Shansung. Pray for the court, pray for justice. Eliza thought about that all night. She lay in her bed, staring at the moon through her window, her mind racing with thoughts of Marbury Shansung, of his family, of the court, of the Constitution. She thought about William Marbury, about how sad he must be, about how his children must be waiting for their father to become a judge, about how his wife must be worried about their future. She thought about her own family, about how lucky she was to have a father who loved her, who had a good job, who could provide for her. She thought about the Constitution, about the words her father had read to her many times, the words that felt like a promise. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. She whispered those words to herself, over and over, trying to understand what they meant. She knew that establish justice meant making things fair, that secure the blessings of liberty meant making sure that people were free. But she did not understand why, if the Constitution promised justice, Marbury Shansung was being treated so unfairly. She did not understand why the president could ignore the law, why the court could not help. She closed her eyes, and she prayed, her hands folded, her voice soft. Please, God, she prayed, help Marbury Shansung. Help the court make the right decision. Help them protect the Constitution. Help them make things fair. Amen. Establish justice, she whispered to herself. That means making things fair, right? She rolled over in bed, hugging her favorite doll, a raggedy teddy bear named Benjamin, which her father had given her for her 7th birthday. She thought about Marbury Shansung's children, about how they must be missing their father's smile, about how they must be wondering why their father was so sad. She thought about how she would feel if her father was sad, if he could not get the job he had worked so hard for. She would be sad too, she thought. She would be scared. She decided that tomorrow, she would go to the Supreme Court, that she would stand outside, and she would pray again. She would pray for Marbury Shansung, for his family, for the court, for justice. She did not know if her prayers would help, but she knew that she had to try. Because that was what you did when someone was in trouble. You helped them. You prayed for them. You stood by them. The next day, Eliza went to the Supreme Court. She put on her best dress, a blue dress with white flowers, and her favorite shoes, and she walked hand in hand with her father to the court. The Supreme Court was a small, simple building made of brick, with large windows and a wooden door, not at all like the big, grand buildings we have today. It was quiet outside the court, with only a few people walking by, talking in soft voices. Eliza stood outside, looking up at the building, her eyes wide with awe. She thought about all the judges inside, about John Marshall, about the big decision they were going to make. She closed her eyes, folded her hands, and prayed again, her voice soft but strong. Please, God, she prayed, help the judges make the right decision. Help them help Marbury Shan's son. Help them protect the Constitution. Help them make things fair. I love you, God. Amen. She opened her eyes, feeling a little better, feeling like her prayers had been heard. She did not know it then, but her prayer was about to be answered, in a way that no one had expected. She did not know that John Marshall would make a decision that would change America forever, that would make sure that justice was done, that would protect the Constitution for generations to come. She did not know that her small act of prayer, her small act of kindness, was part of a bigger story, a story of courage, of wisdom, of hope. Inside the Supreme Court, John Marshall sat with the other judges. The room was quiet, except for the sound of their voices, soft and serious, echoing off the walls. The room was small, with wooden benches for the judges, a wooden table in the middle, and large windows that let in soft sunlight. The air smelled of wood and ink, of old books and leather. The judges were all men, dressed in long black robes, their faces serious, their minds focused on the case before them. They had been talking for days, talking about Marbury's case, talking about the Constitution, talking about the power of the courts. They had read the arguments, they had listened to the lawyers, they had thought long and hard about what was right. Marshall listened carefully, his hands folded on the table, his eyes closed sometimes, thinking, reflecting, remembering all he had seen, all he had fought for, all he believed in. He thought about the Revolutionary War, about the men who had died for freedom. He thought about the Constitution, about the promise it held. He thought about William Marbury, about his family, about the pain his mistake had caused. He thought about Eliza, the little girl who had prayed outside the court, about all the people who were counting on him to do what was right. He knew that he had to make a decision that was fair, that was wise, that was true to the Constitution. He knew that he had to put his personal feelings aside, put his guilt aside, and do what was best for his country. He knew that his decision would be remembered for centuries, that it would shape the future of America. And he was ready, finally. The day came to make a decision. The courtroom was filled with people, lawyers, politicians, ordinary citizens, all waiting to hear what the court would decide. Everyone was quiet, holding their breath, waiting for Marshall to speak. Marshall stood up, his black robe flowing around him, his voice strong and clear, filling the room. He looked around at the people, at the other judges, and he began to speak. He said 3 things, my dear, 3 things that would change America forever. 3 things that would give birth to judicial review, 3 things that would make the Supreme Court the guardian of the Constitution, 3 things that would ensure that justice would always prevail, that no one, not the President, not Congress, not anyone, could be above the law. His voice was calm, steady, full of wisdom and kindness, and everyone in the room listened, hanging on every word. Even the people who disagreed with him, even the people who were worried about what his decision would mean, listened, because they knew that this was a moment in history, a moment that would change everything. First, he said that William Marbury was right. He had been promised a job, and the law said he should have it. James Madison was wrong to refuse to send the papers. He was breaking the law. Marshall spoke softly, but firmly, about Marbury's right to the job, about how he had been wronged, about how the law should protect him. William Marbury was appointed by the President, with the approval of the Senate, Marshall said. He has a right to that job, a right that cannot be taken away by anyone, not even the President. James Madison has refused to do his duty, to send the papers that Marbury is entitled to. He has broken the law, and he should be held accountable. The people in the room nodded, some of them smiling, some of them wiping away tears. Marbury was sitting in the back of the room, and when he heard these words, he felt a wave of relief, a wave of hope. He knew that the court recognized his right, that the court knew he had been wronged. But he also knew that there was more to come, that Marshall had not finished speaking. Second, he said that the law that Marbury had used to bring his case to the Supreme Court, the Judiciary Act of 1789, was against the Constitution. Because the Constitution said that the Supreme Court could only hear certain types of cases first, and Marbury's case was not one of them. The Congress had made a law that went against the Constitution, and that law could not stand. Marshall explained this gently, in a way that everyone could understand, using simple words, avoiding complicated legal terms. The Constitution is the highest law of the land, he said. Any law that goes against the Constitution is not a valid law. It is null and void. The Judiciary Act of 1789 says that the Supreme Court can hear cases like Marbury's first, but the Constitution says otherwise. Therefore, the Judiciary Act of 1789 is unconstitutional. It cannot be enforced. It has no power. This was a bold statement, my dear, a statement that no one had ever made before. No one had ever said that a law passed by Congress was against the Constitution, that it was invalid. The people in the room gasped, some of them looking shocked, some of them looking confused. They had never heard anything like this before. They had never thought that the court had the power to say that a law was unconstitutional. And third, he said that it was the job of the Supreme Court, of the judges, to decide when a law was against the Constitution. He said, "It is emphatically the province and duty of the Judicial Department to say what the law is. Those who apply the rule to particular cases must of necessity expound and interpret that rule. If two laws conflict with each other, the courts must decide on the operation of each." He went on to say that the Constitution was a living document, that it was meant to be interpreted by the courts, that it was the court's duty to make sure that the laws and the actions of the government followed the Constitution. The Constitution is a promise to the people, he said. It is the court's job to keep that promise. It is the court's job to be the guardian of the Constitution, to make sure that no one breaks it. It is the court's job to ensure that justice is done, that all people are treated fairly, that no one is above the law. These words were powerful, my dear, powerful and true. They changed everything. They gave the Supreme Court the power to interpret the Constitution, to say what it meant, to make sure that everyone followed it. They gave birth to judicial review, a gift that would protect America for centuries to come. That is the heart of judicial review, my dear IT, is the idea that the courts have the power to look at a law, or an action of the government, and say, this is against the Constitution, so it cannot be enforced. It is the power to protect the Constitution, to make sure that no one, not the President, not the Congress, not anyone, can break the highest law of the land. It is the power to keep the promise of the Constitution, to make sure that all people are treated fairly, that all people have rights, that all people are free. It is a gift, my dear. A precious gift, a gift that John Marshall gave to America. It is a gift that has protected us for over 200 years, a gift that has made America a nation of laws, not of men. It is a gift that ensures that no one, no matter how powerful, can take away our rights, can ignore the law, can break the promise of freedom. Remember, my dear, judicial review is not just a legal term, not just something that lawyers and judges talk about. It is a promise to you, to me, to every American, that justice will always prevail, that our rights will always be protected, that the Constitution will always be our guide. Marshall did not give Marbury his job, my dear. He said that the Supreme Court did not have the power to order Madison to send the papers, because the law that allowed Marbury to come to the Supreme Court was unconstitutional. Marbury was disappointed, of course. He had hoped to get his job, to provide for his family, to serve his country. But he also understood. He understood that Marshall's decision was not about him, not about his job. It was about the Constitution, about justice, about the future of America. He understood that Marshall had given America something far more precious than a job for one man. He had given the courts the power to be the guardians of the Constitution, to make sure that justice would always prevail. Marbury went home, his head held high, knowing that even though he did not get his job, he had played a part in a moment that would change America forever. He had stood up for justice, he had fought for what was right, and he had helped to give America a gift that would last forever. He told his family, his friends, about the decision, about judicial review, about the importance of the Constitution. He told them that even though he did not get his job, he was proud to have been part of such an important moment. And his family was proud of him, too. They knew that he had done the right thing, that he had stood up for justice, that he had made a difference. I remember, my dear, when I first learned this story. I was just like you, curled up in bed, listening to the words, and I wondered, why was this so important? Why did one case, one decision, matter so much? And then I realized, because it meant that no one could be above the law. It meant that the Constitution was not just a piece of paper, but a promise to every American that they would be treated fairly, that their rights would be protected. It meant that even the president, even the most powerful man in the country, had to follow the law. It meant that the courts were there to protect us, to make sure that we were not wronged, to make sure that justice was done. I remember feeling safe, feeling hopeful, knowing that there was someone looking out for me, someone making sure that the promise of the Constitution was kept. And that is how you should feel, my dear. You should feel safe, feel hopeful, knowing that the Constitution is there to protect you. That judicial review is there to keep the promise of justice, that you are never alone. Remember, my dear, this story is not just about the past. It is about the present, about you, about the future. It is about the gift of justice, the gift of freedom, the gift of hope. Let me tell you another story, my love, a story of a man named Thomas, a blacksmith who lived in Virginia, in a small town called Lexington. Thomas was a hard-working man, with calloused hands from years of hammering metal, with a kind face, with a laugh that was warm and loud. He made horseshoes and tools for the farmers and the townspeople, working from dawn until dusk in his small blacksmith shop, the fire in the forge burning bright, the sound of his hammer ringing through the town. He was a Federalist, like John Marshall, and he believed in a strong federal government, in the Constitution, in justice. He had fought in the Revolutionary War, just like Marshall, and he had seen what it was like to live without freedom, without justice. He had lost friends in the war, friends who had fought for the freedom that he now enjoyed. So he believed deeply in the Constitution, in the promise of justice for all. But when he heard about Marshall's decision in Marbury's case, he was confused. He did not understand why Marshall had not given Marbury his job, why he had said that the Judiciary Act was unconstitutional. He thought that Marshall was letting his own party down, that he was betraying the Federalists. Why? Would Marshall do that? He asked his friend, a teacher named Sarah, one afternoon as she stopped by his shop to pick up a new tool for her classroom. Sarah was a wise woman, with gray hair pulled back in a bun, with kind eyes, with a mind full of knowledge. She had read the Constitution many times, she had studied the law, she believed in justice above all else. Thomas was leaning against his forge, wiping his hands on a rag, his face confused and a little angry. Marbury was a Federalist, like us. He should have given him the job. He should have stood up for his own party. Instead, he said the law was unconstitutional. Doesn't that hurt our party? Doesn't that make it harder for us to keep the federal government strong? I don't understand. Marshall was supposed to be on our side. Sarah smiled, taking a seat on a wooden bench near the forge, the warmth of the fire wrapping around her. She looked at Thomas, her eyes soft with understanding. "Thomas," she said, her voice calm and wise, "I know you're confused. I know you want Marshall to stand up for the Federalists. But Marshall did not do this for the Federalists. He did this for America. He did this to make sure that the Constitution is respected, that no one, not even our own party, can break the law. He did this to make sure that the promise of justice is kept for everyone, not just for Federalists, not just for Democrats, but for every American." Sarah smiled. She was a wise woman, who had read the Constitution many times, who believed in justice above all else. "Thomas," she said, "Marshall did not do this for the Federalists. He did this for America. He did this to make sure that the Constitution is respected, that no one, not even our own party, can break the law. Because if we let one law be unconstitutional, what stops others from doing the same? What stops a president from ignoring the Constitution, from taking away our rights? What stops Congress from making laws that are unfair, that hurt the people?" Marshall knew that. He knew that the Constitution is more important than any party, more important than any man, more important than any job. He knew that if we do not protect the Constitution, if we do not make sure that everyone follows it, then the freedom we fought for will be lost. He knew that judicial review is a gift, a way to protect the Constitution, a way to make sure that justice is done for everyone. Thomas, think about the Revolutionary War. Think about the men who died for our freedom. Do you think they died so that one party could have power? Do you think they died so that the Constitution could be ignored? No, Thomas. They died so that we could have a country where everyone is treated fairly, where everyone has rights, where no one is above the law. That is what Marshall did today. He honored their sacrifice. He protected our freedom. He did what was right. Thomas thought about that. He thought about his own children, a boy named James, who was 10, and a girl named Mary, who was 8. He thought about the future he wanted for them, a future where they were free, where they were treated fairly, where they had rights, where they could live without fear. He thought about the Revolutionary War, about his friends who had died, about the battles he had fought, about the freedom he had fought for. He thought about the Constitution, about the words that said all men are created equal, about the promise of justice for all. He thought about Sarah's words, about how the Constitution is more important than any party, more important than any man. And he realized that Sarah was right. He realized that Marshall had not betrayed the Federalists. He had betrayed no one. He had done what was right for America. He had protected the Constitution, protected the freedom they had fought for, protected the promise of justice. "You're right," he said, his voice soft, his eyes filled with understanding. "Justice is more important than party. The Constitution is more important than any one man, any one group. Marshall did the right thing. I was wrong to be angry. I was wrong to think about the party first. I should have been thinking about America, about the people, about the promise of justice." And so, Thomas began to tell everyone he knew about Marshall's decision. He told the farmers who came to his shop to get horseshoes, the merchants who came to get tools, the children who came to watch him work. He told them about judicial review, about the importance of the Constitution, about how one man's wisdom had given America a gift that would last forever. He told them about Marbury's case, about how Marshall had put justice above party, about how he had protected the Constitution. He told them that judicial review was not just a legal term, but a promise to every American that they would be treated fairly, that their rights would be protected. And slowly, people began to understand. They began to see that Marshall's decision was not a loss for the Federalists, but a win for America. They began to see that justice was more important than party loyalty, that the Constitution was more precious than any political victory. My dear, change takes time. It does not happen overnight. But little by little, as Thomas and others like him shared the story, as people talked about it in their homes, in taverns, in market squares, the idea of judicial review began to take root. It began to feel like a gift, not a threat, a gift that would keep them safe, that would make sure no one could take away their freedom, that would make sure the promise of the Constitution was kept. I love you, my dear. Let me tell you about another soul touched by this decision. A woman named Margaret, a baker who lived in Philadelphia, a city filled with cobblestone streets and the sweet smell of bread baking from dawn until dusk. Margaret was a kind woman, with hands rough from kneading dough, with a warm smile that made everyone who walked into her shop feel welcome. She baked loaves of crusty bread, sweet rolls dusted with sugar, and pies filled with fresh fruit from the nearby farms. Her shop was a gathering place for the townspeople, farmers stopping by for a loaf of bread after a long day in the fields, mothers picking up sweet rolls for their children's bedtime snacks, lawyers and politicians discussing the news of the day over a slice of pie. Margaret had no strong ties to either the Federalists or the Democratic Republicans. She cared only about her family, her shop, and making sure that the people around her were treated fairly. When she first heard about Marshall's decision, she did not understand it. She heard the politicians arguing, heard people talking about unconstitutional laws and judicial power, and it all sounded like complicated words that had nothing to do with her life. But then she heard Thomas's story, told by a farmer who came into her shop one morning, and everything changed. "It's about fairness, Margaret," the farmer said, as he waited for his loaf of bread, his voice soft and earnest. "It's about making sure that no one, not even the president, not even the men in Congress, can make a law that hurts people like you and me. It's about making sure that the Constitution, that promise of freedom and justice, is real, not just words on a piece of paper." Margaret nodded, wiping flour from her hands, her eyes soft with understanding. She thought about her own life, about how hard she worked every day, about how she wanted to make sure her two children, Lila, who was 6, and Jacob, who was 4, grew up in a world where they were treated fairly, where their rights were protected, where they could dream and hope and grow without fear. She thought about the time she had been wronged. Once, a merchant had refused to pay her for a dozen loaves of bread, saying he didn't have to, and she had had no way to make him do the right thing. She thought about how different it would be if there was someone to make sure that the law was followed, that everyone was held accountable. "So this judicial review," she said, her voice soft, "it's like a guardian? A guardian for people like me." The farmer smiled, nodding. "Yes, Margaret. It's a guardian for all of us. And it's all because of John Marshall, a man who chose justice over party, who chose America over power." From that day on, Margaret began to tell her customers about judicial review, too. She would wrap their bread in paper, her hands gentle, and say, "Did you hear about the decision in Marbury's case? It's a gift, my friend, a gift that makes sure we are all treated fairly, that makes sure no one can take our rights away." She told her children about it, too, in simple words they could understand. "Lila, Jacob," she would say, tucking them into bed at night, her voice warm and soft, "there's a man named John Marshall who gave our country a very special gift. It's called judicial review, and it means that no one, no matter how powerful, can break the rules. It means that justice will always be there, watching over us, making sure we are safe." Her children would nod, their eyes growing heavy with sleep, and Lila would ask, "Will it protect us, Mama?" Margaret would kiss her forehead, smiling. "Yes, my love. It will protect us. It will protect all of us, now and forever. Remember, my dear, that is the magic of judicial review. It is not just for lawyers and judges, not just for politicians. It is for everyone, for the baker, the blacksmith, the farmer, the child tucked into bed at night. It is a gift for all of us. As the months passed, Marshall's decision began to be accepted by more and more people. There were still those who disagreed, of course. Some Federalists felt he had betrayed their party. Some Democratic Republicans worried that the courts would become too powerful. But even those who disagreed began to see the wisdom in his choice. They began to see that judicial review was not about power, but about balance. It was about making sure that no one branch of the government had too much control, that the president could not ignore the law, that Congress could not make unfair laws, that the courts could not overstep their bounds. It was about keeping the promise of the Constitution, about making sure that America remained a nation of laws, not of men. My dear, balance is a beautiful thing. It is like the moon and the sun, the day and the night, the rain and the sunshine. Each needs the other to keep the world in harmony. And judicial review is the balance that keeps our government in harmony, that keeps our freedom safe. John Marshall served as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for 34 years, my love, longer than any other Chief Justice in American history. He made many more decisions, many more rulings that shaped our country, but none were as important as the one he made in Marbury's case. He became known as the Great Chief Justice, a man of wisdom, courage, and integrity, a man who loved his country more than anything, a man who kept the promise of the Constitution. He lived a long, full life, surrounded by his family, loved by his countrymen, remembered for the gift he gave to America. Even when he grew old, his eyes still held that same warmth, that same kindness, that same commitment to justice. He would sit by the fire in his home, telling stories to his grandchildren, stories of the Revolutionary War, stories of the Constitution, stories of Marbury's case, and he would say, "Remember, my dears, justice is not just a word. It is a promise we must keep for each other, for our country, for the future." Let me tell you about the day Marshall retired, my dear. He was an old man then, his hair white, his hands shaking, but his mind still sharp, his heart still full of love for his country. The Supreme Court held a special ceremony for him, and people came from all over the country to honor him, to thank him for his service, for his wisdom, for the gift of judicial review. Politicians from both parties stood up to speak, praising him for putting justice above party, for protecting the Constitution, for making America a better place. Even Thomas Jefferson, who had once disagreed with him, sent a letter of thanks, saying, "You have done more to protect the Constitution than any man in our nation's history. You have kept the promise of freedom, and for that, all Americans owe you a debt of gratitude." Marshall stood up, his voice weak but steady, and he spoke to the crowd. "I have done nothing more than my duty," he said, his eyes filled with tears. "I have done what any man would do who loves his country, who believes in justice, who believes in the promise of the Constitution. The gift of judicial review is not mine to keep. It belongs to all Americans, to every generation, to you, to your children, to your children's children. It is a gift that will protect you, that will guide you, that will make sure that justice always prevails." I love you, my dear. As Marshall grew older, he spent more time at home, surrounded by his family, watching the seasons change, thinking about the legacy he would leave behind. He would sit on his porch, looking out at the rolling hills of Virginia, the same hills he had played on as a child, the same hills he had fought for during the Revolutionary War. He would hold the hand of his wife, Polly, and say, "I hope I have done enough. I hope I have kept the promise of the Constitution. I hope I have given our country a gift that will last forever." Polly would smile, squeezing his hand, her voice soft. "You have done more than enough, John. You have given America justice. You have given America hope. You have given America a future." And she was right, my dear. Marshall had given America more than just a legal principle. He had given America a foundation of justice, a foundation of freedom, a foundation that would carry the country through good times and bad, through war and peace, through joy and sorrow. He had given America the gift of judicial review, a gift that would never be forgotten. Now, my love, let us think about what this means for you. You are a child of freedom, a child of justice, a child of the Constitution. You live in a country where judicial review protects you, where no one can take away your rights, where you can speak your mind, where you can dream your dreams, where you can be who you want to be. You live in a country where the law is the same for everyone, rich or poor, strong or weak, where justice is not just a word, but a promise. And that is all because of John Marshall, a man who made a brave decision, a man who chose justice over power, a man who loved his country more than anything. Remember, my dear, you have that same courage inside you. You have that same ability to stand up for what is right, to protect others, to keep the promise of justice. You may be small now, but you are powerful. You may be young, but you have the power to make a difference, just like John Marshall, just like William Marbury, just like Eliza, just like Thomas, just like Margaret. Every small act of kindness, every stand for what is right, every belief in justice, these are the things that make our country strong, that keep the promise of the Constitution alive. Close your eyes, my dear. Feel the warmth of your blanket around you. Feel the steady rhythm of your breath. Feel the love that surrounds you. The moon is still shining outside, soft and gentle, watching over you as you sleep. The world is quiet, peaceful, safe. And as you drift off to dreamland, remember this. You are safe, you are loved, you are protected. The gift of judicial review is there for you. The promise of the Constitution is there for you. The courage of John Marshall is there for you. You are never alone. You are part of a bigger story, a story of courage, of wisdom, of hope, of justice. A story that began long ago, in 1801, with a man who forgot to send some papers, a man who fought for his rights, and a man who made a decision that changed America forever. A story that continues today, with you, with me, with every American who believes in justice, who believes in freedom, who believes in the promise of the Constitution. I love you, my dear. More than words can say. Sleep tight, my love. Dream of John Marshall, of William Marbury, of Eliza and Thomas and Margaret, of a country where justice prevails, where freedom is cherished, where love is everywhere. Dream of a world where everyone is treated fairly, where everyone has rights, where no one is above the law. And when you wake up tomorrow, remember that you are part of that dream, that you have the power to keep that dream alive. Remember, my dear, justice is a gift, and it is ours to protect, ours to cherish, ours to pass on to the next generation. Sleep well, my love. The moon is watching, the stars are shining, and you are safe. I love you, always and forever, and as you sleep, my dear, let me leave you with one last thought, a thought from John Marshall himself, a thought that has guided America for over 200 years. The Constitution is the highest law of the land, and it is the duty of every American to uphold it, to protect it, to keep its promise. Justice is not just for the powerful, not just for the famous. It is for every man, every woman, every child. It is the foundation of our freedom, the heart of our country, the hope of our future. Sleep tight, my love. May your dreams be filled with warmth, with joy, with justice, with love. I love you, now and always.